Okay, so good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Samantha Connolly, like she said. Sometimes repetition is good medicine when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia. I just need, before I begin, one brave soul to experience what it feels like to be with someone with dementia. This is not exactly the feeling, but this is what they taught us as a simulation. So what's going to happen to you is you're going to get earplugs, you're going to get your fingers taped, and you're going to wear the 3D glasses that we wear at the cinema, and they're going to be a little bit foggy. So you're going to miss the presentation essentially, but I'm going to think that you're following my presentation. Anybody willing to volunteer? If you're not willing to volunteer, that's fine. You willing? Come right up. What's your name? Tamara. You won't be recorded, don't worry. So I'm going to tape two of your fingers together, just so you can feel these two and the other two. Like, try to mimic. You're right-handed or left-handed?
Right.
Okay, so I can do all two then, two hands. So for the entire presentation, I'm gonna need you, and remember it's being recorded, so if you miss the presentation, you get it after. I'm gonna need you to wear the funky 3D glasses, and I messed them up, but you can still see out of them, and put the earplugs in your ear. Now I already taped your fingers, so I want you to do that with your fingers taped, and then resume your seat. They're clean earplugs, I just took them out of the plastic.
I trust you.
All right. Give her a round of applause for volunteering for that for us. You can't take them off for the whole presentation. So on behalf of the Alzheimer's and Dementia Association, I was asked to come and do this presentation for you guys. ADASI is the short acronym for Alzheimer's and Dementia Association. That is our website there, our info, and the contact phone number. The founder of the association is Ms. Dorothy Davis, and she's also the chairperson. I am the pharmaceutical advisor, director, and deputy chair of the association. So let's begin. This year's theme is Remember Me, and that's remembering the person with the Alzheimer's or the person with the dementia. And that's the international theme. So this month is World Alzheimer's Month, and we're having several events this month to promote and educate about Alzheimer's and dementia. And one of those was this presentation here at the government building to make sure that we get as much information out as possible. So what is our association about? The Alzheimer's and Dementia Association's mission is to raise awareness with the general public about the various dementias with a focus specifically on Alzheimer's. And I'll tell you in a minute that there's a difference between Alzheimer's and dementia. And we want to diminish the stigma that currently exists. The stigma is that there's nothing that can be done about these people. They're old, they're feeble, they're going crazy, they're shut in. Just put them away in a home, throw away the key, and there's nothing that we can do with them. And that is the stigma. Sometimes when I was growing up in East End as a young kid, I remember probably that person had dementia or probably Alzheimer's, and we used to call her a witch. And when we got off the school bus, we used to pelt rocks at her window because she wore funny clothes and she always had her windows shut tight and she always yelling at us through the door, and you know, she just wasn't right. But probably now that I'm older, I'm realizing she probably had a form of Alzheimer's or dementia, but we didn't understand what it was, or it wasn't diagnosed at that time. Another important message we want to give as our mission for the Alzheimer's and Dementia Association is to educate carers on how to interact properly with people with dementia. Oftentimes, I know in the Caribbean, especially here in Cayman, we don't put our loved ones in a home. We take care of our loved ones, our moms, our dads, our grandparents at our own homes, and we often hire a regular domestic helper. Now, this is something that a regular domestic helper may have difficulties with and difficulties understanding how to deal with these people because they're not a normal case of a situation. So sometimes the carers need training, and that includes the family members to understand it. Because we've had family members come to us, say 2 daughters and their mom has it, and one of them is saying, well, she recognizes my other sister, but I'm the one that's always at the house taking care of her. I'm the one paying the bills. I'm the one cleaning her. And she doesn't recognize me, but she recognizes the sister that doesn't come around. She comes around only on Sundays, and you know, it's very upsetting to me. It's very depressing to me. So for us, we need to be able to educate those carers and loved ones as well, so that they don't get depressed and upset, and show them some support as well. There's a very interesting book written by Dr. Laird, and it's called Take Your Oxygen First. And one of the statistics that came out of that book is that the caregiver often dies before the person that is affected with Alzheimer's. And this is because they're so busy taking care of the person with Alzheimer's and dementia, they forget to take care of themselves. So her title of her book was Take Your Oxygen First, and it came from the theme of when you're on the airplane. The pressure in the cabin might change if we experience some turbulence. Oxygen mask will drop down from below. Please put your mask on first before you can assist the little one or the elderly next to you. Oftentimes we don't do that. We would think of putting it on the person that's next to us because they're older, she's young, she's a baby, she can't do it herself. But at the same time, while that 20 minutes or the 20 seconds that you're doing that, the cabin pressure will drop and you will pass out. So you are not able to take care of yourself, nor able to take care of the person next to you. So that's why they say put your oxygen on first. So we want to also be a resource and support for people with dementia, family members, and carers. One of the aims and some of the aims of our association is to provide eventually, hopefully, a respite center for carers and where they can go and relax. So when I went to Orlando last month on a caregiver's training, it was basically like a dementia cafe where you could go, and sometimes you could take the loved one, and it was geared towards people with Alzheimer's and dementia and geared towards caregivers. So their seats were comfortable, they got a downtime, somebody else watched your loved one while you couldn't. And there was also a one called Brain Flex, which was like a daycare. So the story goes, once a man, twice a child. Sometimes when you get Alzheimer's and dementia, they're almost back like they're little kids. So this idea in Orlando was you take them, it's called Brain Flex, you take them to daycare, older people daycare, because they're not fully bedridden and they're not fully Alzheimer's, but they got a bit of dementia, so they're able to go to a daycare. They do brain exercises, they get out of the home, and you drop them off in the morning and you pick your loved one back up 5 o'clock as you would do your kindergarten child. So that was very interesting. So Cayman hopes to mimic that one day. Formal training, like I said, is very important for carers and caregivers. And most important was to establish a registry so that if you called me and asked me, Sam, I'm having this problem with my mom, I need somebody to come and take care of her and help take care of her, who would you recommend? So I would have a list of people that I know that were trained, and I would be able to recommend them for you. Of course, all of this is not possible without funds and assistance. We do have a lot of people asking us for funds and assistance, especially with the medications. They're very, very expensive for Alzheimer's and dementia. On average, it's about $100 to $200 a month for Alzheimer's medication. So the awareness campaign is what I'm doing here today, in partnership with you stakeholders and healthcare professions and service organizations. So once again, thank you very much to the government administration building and your staff for giving us this opportunity to present to you today. So let's get right into it. What is Alzheimer's and dementia? Before I start, I'm going to ask you to remember 3 words for me, and I'm going to ask you them at the end. Do not write anything down. Apple, banana, chair. Good. Dementia is a loss of brain function that occurs with certain diseases. It affects the memory, thinking, language, judgment, and behavior. It comes from the Latin word dementia, meaning without mind. We don't exactly know why, but we do know that there is nerve damage and damage to the neurons, and the neurons are the cells of the brain. There's also a chemical component. So the cells in the brain are talking to each other. They're releasing a chemical that also goes to the next cell in the brain. And you have billions and millions of these. Just for me to wiggle my finger takes about 20 billion cells just for me to do that. So you can imagine if some of those cells are dying, I might have a problem just doing that, or writing, or holding a pot, or something of that nature, if those cells in that area that's responsible for that are dying off. Unfortunately, most types of Alzheimer's and dementia is not reversible. It's degenerative. It will go downhill with time. Now, dementia is the overarching theme. Anything that causes a loss of brain function that is related to the neurons in the brain is called dementia. So when you're unable to write properly or speak properly, or you're calling an apple a pear, I'm talking about somebody with dementia now, or they're always reverting back to the 1932 storm and telling you about that, or they're constantly calling you by your mother's name or your sister's name, that's a form of dementia. We differentiate dementia from Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is they don't remember names, they don't remember faces, and they don't remember places. So dementia is the overarching theme. Alzheimer's is the most common type of dementia there is. Okay? It was first recognized by Dr. Alois Alzheimer, and that's how it got its name in 1906. On average, an individual will live up to 18 years up to 8 years after diagnosis with Alzheimer's and dementia, but as long as 20 years. So you can see how this is a debilitating disease. If you're diagnosed with it, that doesn't mean you're going to die tomorrow. It means that you can live a long time and be steady. You can remain mild to moderate, but most oftentimes it declines and you get worse and worse to the point sometimes where you're bedridden. We had a patient just the other day that she had nothing physically wrong with her. Her heart was fine, her lungs was fine, no diabetes, no hypertension, nothing like that. Just the cells in the brain were dying to the point where she ended up bedridden, to the second point where the brain stem cells died off, and the brain stem is responsible for your breathing center. So she stopped and forgot to breathe, and that's how she died. Nothing we could do about that. Those cells in that brain area were gone. Everything else with her was fine. She didn't have diabetes, no hypertension, no nothing. So this tells you your brain controls everything, controls every organ, controls every sense of your body. So we don't know exactly what causes Alzheimer's and dementia. We just don't know. The cause is still unknown, because unfortunately it's not till you're dead and we do an autopsy and we look at the cells in the brain that we can say with 100% certainty that that's what you were diagnosed with. I'm going to get into some diagnostic tests that we can say that's what you have, but 100% certainty is not till after autopsy. And the brain, you can't biopsy it. So like cancer cells, I could probably tell you what type of cancer you have because I biopsied the cells. The brains, we don't really biopsy it to see exactly what's going on, right? You don't cut into it and then put it back together. Just, it's not worked. However, research does suggest that we do have environmental factors and we do have inherited factors. There is a gene that has been mapped to tell you, and you can get tested. It's quite expensive to get tested for this gene, but if one of your parents had it or one of your grandparents had it, we can tell you based on DNA if you will have a likelihood. That doesn't mean you're going to get it, but if you carry the gene, you have a likelihood, an increased likelihood of getting a form of Alzheimer's and dementia. So it's a clinical syndrome, meaning we can't diagnose it just by one thing alone. So we look at cognitive or behavioral impairment that interferes with your ability to function and work or do usual activities. And that's a capital and, it must represent a decline from prior levels of functioning. And, another and, it is not explained by something else, such as delirium or a major psychiatric disorder. And we're including depression in that. We're including a lot of other things, because a lot of other things can affect your memory. So to make sure, we have to look at quite a few functional elements. Again, it's considered a disease of aging. So the older you are, the more likelihood you will be diagnosed with this disease. 12% of persons over 65 and 50%, 1 in 2, not if, not maybe, will have a form. It might not be Alzheimer's, but they will have a form of dementia. 1 in 2 over 85. Currently, it's the sixth leading cause of death, and by the year 2040, it's going to be the #1 cause of death. And the reason for this is other chronic diseases we can live with. We're even curing now. We're getting into remission. So we're talking about things like HIV and AIDS that was killing us, say, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Now we can live a long time with those diseases. We're talking about cancer that was killing us before. Now we have treatments for it. We can go into remission from cancer. Unfortunately, because the population is always going to be aging, and then we have the baby boomers, so by 2040, they're going to be in that age group between 65 and 85. And so that's why Alzheimer's and dementia is going to be the #1 cause of death. And these are US statistics, but you can extrapolate them to anywhere in the world. So what are our symptoms? Depending on the part of the brain, and that's a picture of the brain there, the intelligence and your judgment and your behaviors in your frontal lobe, depending on the part of the brain that the cells are dying, this is the part that you will manifest your symptoms as. So if you're having trouble with language, getting very frustrated because I keep asking you for an apple and you keep bringing me a pear, but the word that is coming out of my mouth is pear. You know, you keep feeding me chicken and I tell you I don't eat chicken, but you know me all your life to have eaten chicken. It's just that I'm missing that word and I'm missing that connection, and it's very real to me that I don't eat chicken. It's unusual for you because you noticed me eat it yesterday, but as a dementia patient, it's very, very real to me. I'm telling you that I want to go home to my mother's house, and you're saying to me my mother died 25 years ago. You telling me seems like I've heard that for the first time. It's very real to me. So I'm going to get emotional. I'm going to start crying. I'm talking about a dementia patient, an Alzheimer's patient now. So it's very real to them in the moment that they're in, because those cells are not there. The basal part of your brain is the memory. So those that have the Alzheimer's that can't remember names, can't remember faces, can't remember places. And when I say can't remember, I mean can't remember. It does not come back to them. Because we all have our elusive moments where I'll say, can't remember her name, and then 2 hours later you call you back and say, you know what her name was so-and-so. It comes back to you after a while. With an Alzheimer's patient, it doesn't come back to them at all. Okay? At all. Emotional and cognitive behavior and personality. Again, that can be affected depending on the part of the brain. Language, the basal part of your brain is where the language center is. Now you have a great Christian lady praying, singing all the time, and all of a sudden it's curse word this and curse word that, and you're thinking to yourself, she knows exactly what she's saying because she's using them in context. She's frustrated with this and she's frustrated with that, and her sentence is making sense. But her personality is not the nice Christian lady that I knew before. Remember, we all know those bad words, but there is a part of our brain that suppresses them. We know when to say them from when not to say them. We know the appropriate time to use certain languages. If that part of her brain has died, that sensory is not there, so it's more free to say what it is. Remember, that is not the true heart or intent of the person. Cognitive skills such as calculations, judgment, and behavior. We had a case just a few weeks ago where a cashier actually called the Alzheimer's and Dementia Association because she did not know the number for the family member, but she recognized the customer at Foster's, always come into Foster's, sees her weekly or every 2 weeks, whatever the case. And this time she tried to pay for her groceries with coins. And she had looked very disheveled. Usually she's very neatly dressed, very well groomed, and she was like in house slippers and house clothes. She had driven herself there, and she was trying to pay for the groceries with coins. And the cashier picked up right away, something is not right here. I've seen this lady 2 weeks ago and she was not like this. She didn't know anyone else to call, so she called our number. And luckily, Cayman's kind of small, we actually knew who the person was and was able to find a relative. And it was that she was in the early stages of dementia. So there you have it, judgment and behavior. Usually starts and appears as forgetfulness. Now don't get alarmed. All of us probably forgot something today, forgot to come to this meeting, had to turn back this morning. There you go, hands up. Had to turn back this morning, forgot your keys. I had to turn back twice back to the hospital because I forgot the presentation. Don't get alarmed. That is not dementia. That is not Alzheimer's. Normal aging, normal busy day, normal multitasking, we're going to forget things, but it comes back to us. That's the difference between them and a normal aging component. It will come back to you after a while. What did I go in this kitchen for again? What did I come in the fridge for again? And then you go sit back down, then you get back up and go, oh yeah, I came in here for water, I came in here. That is normal because we're multitasking, we're functioning, we're working 2 jobs. We're thinking about the kid, plus we got a presentation to do, plus we're thinking about how I'm gonna get home today because my car is in the garage. You're thinking about 15 different things. That is a normal part of life and normal part of aging, so don't get alarmed. Later on though, as Alzheimer's and dementia, you can imagine the person can become quite depressed because I'm telling you 15 times for the day that I want to go to my mom's house and you have me stuck here in this house that I don't recognize. It is not my house and you've held me against my will and I'm ready to go home. And you're saying to her, your home was destroyed since Ivan. It's very real to her. Ivan, a hurricane came, and she's very alarmed, she's very upset because she doesn't remember that and you're telling it to her for the first time. So you can imagine how they can become depressed, agitated, withdrawn because you're telling me something, I'm trying to tell you something else. So it really takes patience, it really takes training to care for these people. Same thing I was talking about. Definitely we notice with those with higher education, it shows quite early on because their reasoning and the handling of complex tasks is the first to go. Visual spatial abilities, and this is also very, very traumatic for Alzheimer's and dementia patient. And what I mean by that is distance and time. So for example, driving and going around a roundabout, reaction time, she thinks it's closer than what it is, and it was just there before, and it wasn't there yesterday, that type of thing. Her visual and spatial depth and perception is different. So you're thinking, oh, let me get her checked for glasses, let me get her checked for something else, and it could actually be a form of dementia coming on. So what are our causes and risk factors? Well, like I said, aging is one of the risk factors. We do have a gene, another one, but some of the medical conditions such as Huntington's disease, multiple sclerosis, and any disease that affects the brain, Lyme disease, HIV/AIDS, Parkinson's disease, the one where you're shaking. That chemical that I talked about that talks to each other, that is the key chemical for Parkinson's, acetylcholine. It is on the decline in a Parkinson's patient, so that's why they start to tremble. When we give them the acetylcholine inhibitor back, we increase that level of that chemical talking to each other. That's the same chemical that lays down for brain cells to do memories. So we often notice a person with Parkinson's will end up with a form of dementia. Pick's disease. And we're not sure exactly why, but Pick's disease is where fatty deposits, mostly cholesterol, which should not be in the brain, end up in the brain, and they form these little fatty deposits. And I'll show you a picture in a second. And basically, you can imagine if something is in between where you're supposed to be talking to each other, a piece of fat or a piece of tissue, then it won't be able to talk to each other. And we notice this with dementia patients that are much younger. There's actually someone diagnosed that is only 45 with a form of dementia. Diabetes, and this is our most common one for the vascular dementia, meaning the blood flow to the brain or blood flow to anywhere in the body. Diabetes or vascular dementia can happen from strokes and things of that nature. So anything affecting circulation will also affect the brain. The brain only uses 2 chemicals, oxygen and sugar. So if it has no oxygen and it has no sugar, it's in a problem. It will start to die. Risk factors, again, sedentary lifestyle. This idea of us driving around the parking lot in Foster's or Kirk's until we get the first parking seat, because we're not walking from way down the bottom to the top. We're just not doing it. So we just want to go inside quickly and do that. I suggest to you guys, and I know a lot of us are doing this step thing and we're all into this fitness thing, and it's actually really good. It kind of encourages you because it zaps me every now and then, goes, you were sitting down too long, let's get up and do some steps. And I'm like, okay. But if we do small things like park further away, take the stairs instead of the elevators, it will really, really help. I know that we're working 9 to 5s, and often a lot of us have desk jobs or are sitting at a desk, but if we just use that time, again, if you're like me, I don't mop my floor anymore. I use a Swiffer sweeper thing, and I just swift, and my mom's like, your floor is not clean. And I'm like, it looks good to me. But if we were back to the old days where we had to wring out the mop and do that physical exercise, you know, I don't know what it is to hang clothes on the line. I put everything in the dryer. But that physical activity of bending down and putting clothes on the line is actually quite active. If you notice that some of the elderly people is only now, and they're 80 and 90 and 70, all sorts of numbers, it's only now that you're seeing a little decline in them. Before that, they were perfectly healthy, right? Because they walked everywhere. They washed their clothes on hands. They mopped with a regular mop, not a Swiffer sweeper, and things of that. Diets high in saturated fats. Well, this is a Caribbean problem. Very good today that we had salads and sandwiches, but normally what do we have? Rice and bean, oxtail, high in fat. And we have that for lunch, and we have something similar for dinner. And then dinner is very late, and we go to sleep with this fatty substance in our body. So let me just show you a picture, basically, of a scan of the brain. Now, when we do the diagnostic test, we can do a CAT scan or MRI. Again, they don't send you for these things on a regular basis because they're very expensive, and you need a specialist to make sure that they order those. So you have to be having something serious before you get an MRI or a CAT scan done. However, with those, we can see, depending on the one we use, the images of the brain and the activities of the brain. And it will show in color, but it's not really your brain is colored, it just shows that as an image, how active a certain part of the brain is. And basically, when we look at that, I can tell you, oh, the central lobe is damaged, the basal lobe is damaged, the respiratory center is damaged, things of that nature, and we can see what's happening. Unfortunately, we know where it's damaged, but we don't know how to fix it, right? However, there is good news. The brain is quite pliable. So there is this story that as we were kids, and I know I don't have any kids, but I know most of you guys do, you put them in ballet, you put them in some sort of instrument when they're about 7, 8, 9, maybe younger, and you put them in some sort of sports. And there's a reason for that. They might only go to ballet for a year, but there's a reason for that. At that stage in your life, your brain is pliable, so it's forming new connections. With an Alzheimer's and dementia patient, we can do the same thing. We can form new connections with them. It's very difficult to do at that age, but it can be done. So things like exercise, brain activities, music, the best one we've seen for increase is learning a new language. So there's a reason why they tell you put your kid in karate, tell you put your kid in ballet, and you're thinking I'm spending $500, $600 a month on this, but it's because it's a pliability of the brain at that age, and it often works again when they're older. Again, we don't know exactly why, but it's possible for new neurons to be laid down. So a healthy neuron, that's the one in the center, it has a myelin sheath around it, protecting it. And if that myelin sheath is damaged, which is what happens in multiple sclerosis, the two neurons can touch each other. They're only supposed to touch at their head, but they can touch now anywhere on their body. And so they're firing when they're not supposed to be firing. So they're saying things when they're not supposed to be saying things. They're doing things when they're not supposed to be doing things, or vice versa, not doing things when they're supposed to be doing things because they're getting the wrong signal. That plaque was the deposits often seen in Pick's disease. Again, if you can imagine two neurons trying to talk to each other, and that's in the way. They're not able to talk to each other. And just you can see, again, a picture of a shrunken brain compared to a healthy brain. It's supposed to take up your whole brain cavity. And with Alzheimer's or dementia patients, we do notice there's a shrinkage in the brain because a dead cell is quite shrunken and a healthy neuron is quite fat. A neuron is just the name of a brain cell. So there's no definite diagnostic tests. We have to do a multitude of tests, unfortunately. The other problem is that we don't diagnose Alzheimer's and dementia until it's about moderate to severe. This is because it's hard to see it. You just think you're being forgetful. You just think you're being under stress. You just think of this and think of that. until it's about 10 years down the line when you're really bad and you really can't remember things and you're really struggling, that you go and get it checked out. And when we diagnose you, you're in moderate to severe, meaning you're going to decline from there or you're going to stay where you're at. There's no going back this way. So prevention is more important. Early diagnosis is one of our key take-home messages as well. Now, very difficult to do because, again, it's the brain. We can't autopsy it until the end. But what they do is they do blood work to make sure. So we can see chemical components in the brain. We can see them through the blood. Worst case scenario, we can do a CAT scan or MRI, and we can see at that stage. Again, that's usually not till the later stage. But what they're using now is these mini mental state examinations, and you can find them online. And I'm going to give you an example of one now. And basically, they help to evaluate your memory and your recognition. We have to be careful with the ones that we extrapolate from the UK and the US, though, because I took a patient to Miami the other day to do one of these to get further testing, and it was a US-based exam. So some of the questions was, what's the first president of the United States? Of course, he marked 0 on that. And then there was another picture, please identify these 3 animals. And it's a picture of 3 animals. And one is a beaver and one is a reindeer or something, right? And he like cow, rabbit, you know what I mean? And the guy is like, the doctor is like, X, like he's failing this thing. And I had to step in and basically say, you know, we don't recognize them. We don't see them in the Cayman Islands. This is a seaman. He's probably never traveled. Recently, he probably traveled back in his seaman days, but lately, you know, he's been on the brack. He doesn't really travel as much, so he's not aware of that. So you have to be careful when we're using these. But I'm just going to give you an example if you want to participate along with me. It's just going to take a minute. If everybody can take a piece of paper from the end, and if you have your pens, if you don't have pens, I have a few here, but I need them back at the end. Just grab a piece of paper quickly for me. And I'm going to repeat a series of instructions, and I want you to follow these instructions as best as possible. Remember, we're not truly grading you. I can't grade a person that has Alzheimer's and dementia off of one test, okay? Has to be a multiple test. As well, you can't give a definite diagnosis off of one test because you have to come back within 3 months and do the test over again, and then we rate if they went down or the person went up. So it's a cognitive decline. Remember what I told you? So some people need pens. I was told to get my pens back. Please. You know this is government. All right, everyone ready? Ready? I want for you to draw me a clock. I want you to draw the clock as big as possible on the paper. And I want you to number the clock. I want you to number the clock as you would a usual clock. Then I want you to indicate the time on the clock at 10 minutes to 11. Then I want you to indicate the time on the clock as 10 minutes to 11. When everyone's finished, I won't repeat the instructions again. When everyone's finished, just let me know, and if I could use yours, Miss Sarah, just as an example, don't worry. You will be exempt. That's okay. Everyone pretty much finished? All right, this group is not doing too well. This is something that is timed in a mini COG exam. Okay? So everyone finished. Stop, pens down, stop writing. Let's just see. All right, first of all, I said I want you to draw a clock, and I want you to draw it as big on the page. So if we had a page, I'm looking for if they put it like that or if they put it in the page, because I want it as big, right? On the page. So that's first of all. Now, I didn't say circle, but a typical clock is circular. However, you do have people that have square face watches. You do have people that have digital clocks at home, especially the elderly, right? They mightn't have a regular watch like that. So I'm also looking for that. I'm looking for a circle. But some people might have drawn a square. Is a circle a true circle? That's the visual spatial element of the brain. So with this one test, I can tell you 18 different parts of your brain, whether they're working or not. One test, just drawing a simple clock. Okay, that's the first. The visual spatial is where they put it and how big they put it. Did they draw a circle or did they draw an oval, triangle, square, whatever, right? And does the circle look like a circle or is it skewed? The second thing, and usually you're watching the person when they're doing it, is I say put the numbers on the clock as you would a normal clock. What I look for here is them putting them in the right location, but more importantly, I look for how they did it. And usually a person will do the 4 points first. And that's visual spatial again, because you're trying to spread out your things, right? So you usually go 12, maybe 6, right? 3, 9. That's what it's supposed to be. A lot of people don't though. They'll start and they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. And then they'll get here and they go, oh, they're not spaced out enough. Then they big space 8. And then 10, you know? And then they go 12, and then they go, no, not 12, 12 is here, type thing. So I'm looking for that. Again, that's about 9 different parts of your brain. First of all, numbers. Are you having recollection of numbers, right? And are you having recollection of how the numbers are shaped? Yeah? Where they go, space them out. So normally a person will put it here, here, and here first, and then they will fill in the spaces so that everything is spaced out. Last point, I said indicate the time on the clock that it shows, what did I say, 10 minutes to 11? What I'm looking for here, again, another part of the brain. Did they do this? Or did they just draw the hands on it, right? I hear you guys chuckling because a lot of you did it wrong, right? Don't worry, it's normal. You had a rough day. It's Friday after all, and who wants to be in an educational session, right? But first thing I'm looking for is that. Second thing I'm looking for is the length of the hands. We know on a clock we have a short hand and we have a long hand. And if you're very good, you have a second hand, the small second hands too. But I'm looking for a long and short. So did the person put 2 long hands or did they put a long and short? That's another part of the brain, totally different part of the brain. And did the person put them in the correct placement, right? 10 minutes to 11 would be where? The big one would go, and then the small one would be close to the 11, something like that. All of that, one simple clock, one simple test that we give, and then when they come back in 3 months, we give it to them again. They come back in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, whatever, we give it to them again. A simple test can show you that. Now, don't get alarmed. She didn't even, oh Lord, she got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. You need to see me after, please. She didn't even put the clock, the hands on the clock. And then we time them as well. So you'll have some people that can complete this and complete it perfectly well, but they'll take them like an hour. They'll complete it perfectly well, but it takes them a long time because they're looking for that memory. They're searching in their brain for that correct memory. And then you have some people, boom, 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 it's completed. So that again tells me something, tells us something about the brain, tells us something about the area of the brain. So don't get alarmed, that was just an example. So we answer the question, is there cognitive impairment and is there a functional decline? Meaning, was she good this month and then a year later I tested her and she's going down from there. If there is both, we proceed with the evaluation. So the mini cogs, like we just did, we also do the basic living activities. Are they able to dress? Are they able to eat? Bathing, exercising. Yes, they're able to do it, but if you asked her what she had for breakfast, can she tell you? Or can she tell you she's not hungry and you know she hasn't eaten? walking, toileting, and general hygiene. We often see in the early stages, that's what happened. They'll wear the same thing over again and tell you, it's clean, it doesn't smell, you know, I just put this on today and you came in yesterday, she was in that, and you're thinking to yourself, no, something is not right. But she's talking to you other than that, fine, right? Or she combing her hair differently. She normally never puts her hair like that, and all of a sudden it's like that. And she's thinking it looks good. This look good, right? You're like, no. Shopping, like I said, that one was brought to our attention. And these are real life things. Housekeeping, accounting, buying too much or buying too little or spending money, another red flag. Food preparation, and this is the one I noticed with my own grandmother. She was an avid baker, and we noticed that she was baking and putting in all sorts of things, using salt instead of sugar. Everything else was fine, but you know, you go eat the cake and you're thinking, what's going on with this cake? And realizing she didn't have Alzheimer's, she had a form of dementia. And the reason for us to look at all of this is to make sure, like I said, there's no other clinical brain reason, including schizophrenia and depression. The lab tests can tell me that chemical component, and 90% of the time, a lot of us have thyroid problems, which also give you a lot of brain problems, and it's undiagnosed. Overactive or underactive thyroid is also quite indicative of a problem. The other one that we often do is a hearing test. She got dementia, or she just not hearing you? She's bumping into things and not giving you salt and sugar because she has a cataract, and she has lived with that cataract for 10 years and the sight is a problem, or she has macular degeneration, so she won't tell you that she can't hear, she won't tell you that she can't see, you know, because she doesn't want to bother you. You know, my daughter's very busy, I don't want to bother her with that. You know, I've been doing fine all this time without it. So we also do those tests as well. Unfortunately, there's no cure. Big red flag. The goal of treatment is to slow the progression of the disease and to manage the complications of the disease with the support and family and caregivers. You need to assist in their cognitive function, delay as best we can. And the medications that are used in Alzheimer's and dementia only delay. They do not cure it. So they're replacing that enzyme that's supposed to be there. They're replacing the enzyme that builds neurons. However, if the neuron's going to die tomorrow, I'm just keeping you at a steady state. I'm not curing you, and I'm slowing the decline, but I'm not even stopping it, right? Disruptive behavior. Again, we might have to go to a lot of things that we notice with dementia patients is what we call sundowning. And again, back to infant stage, the sun is starting to set, she got colic, she crying when the sun set. An adult and a dementia patient almost does the same thing. When the sun starts to set, they become very disoriented. Remember, cortisol in your body is what keeps you knowing that it's day and night, as well as your visual knowing that it's day and night. So sometimes they can sleep all day and be up all night because they're not aware that it's day or night. And we find that quite often with a person. So what we would have to do is come in with medication, because a caregiver can't stay up 24 hours with them and be able to care for them. So you see, you have to put them on sleeping aids and things of that nature. And unfortunately, the side effect is a double whammy of some of them, is that it's damaging the brain cells. So how do we balance that properly? Very, very difficult task. Reasonable quality of life, we want to maintain that, and their independence for as long, and their dignity for as long as possible. Sometimes that's very difficult to do. Very important with them, you have to foster a safe environment. Like I said, if you don't have a memory of where you are, or a memory of that your mom died 15 years ago, me telling you that for the first time is very scary, very upsetting, because it's the first time to them that they've heard it. So we have to be very delicate and foster a safe environment. Eating problems, again, the part of the brain that remembered that she ate this morning is not there. So you can have a caregiver who's not aware, fix the food, put it there, thinks that she's eating it, she throws it away, And then when you go and look for your mom and you notice her over a period of a month or 2 or 3, and you look, Mom getting really slim, but I'm buying the food and putting here. The helper is cooking the food. What's going on? And the helper is not even noticing because she's gone to do washing or something else that the mom threw it away. But the plate is clean, or you know what I mean? So they're not realizing. And they don't feel hungry. The part of the brain that's telling them that they're hungry is not there. So they will not eat for several days at a time and tell you that they're eating, or vice versa. We can have it opposite too, overeating or eating certain things in the wrong time. When my grandmother got a little bit older, the helper called me one day and she's like, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm about to feed her breakfast, but she wants ice cream. And I'm thinking, my grandmother's 89, she wants ice cream. I know worried about diabetes at this stage, give her ice cream because she didn't eat anything, give it to her, that's what she wants. You know, so you got to be very delicate at the time. She's like, but the list here says bacon and egg this morning. I'm like, well, forget the list today and give her, because she wasn't eating, and she wasn't eating when she was supposed to eat. The last sense that goes in the taste bud is the one for sweet. And the last brain cells is the ones for music. So even when they can't talk to you back, they often enjoy hearing music. It takes a team to deal with these. The caregivers, we know about the attorneys, the bankers, the medical teams, and the architect. You might have to go into your home and put it to a more dementia-friendly home, wheelchairs, ramps, things of that nature. We had this one patient in Northside. We had to go into the home and make sure the home was safe because he is a farmer and has a gun. And so the son left him with the gun, but left him with blanks. And he was loading and unloading the gun, but with blanks. So the son says, leave him alone, it's harmless because they're blanks. However, he went next door to his other friend, who's also a farmer, who has loaded rounds. And he was in a good day. So they were talking normally. He says, yeah, I'm going out round back and I'm going to shoot my cow today. But I don't have any bullets. Can you lend me one of your bullets? And he did, because he's talking fine. He's his neighbor for many years. He didn't notice that he's on a decline of something, and he loaded the gun. And he was busy cleaning the gun, forgot that he had loaded it, and it went off. Luckily, it went off in the ground or in the floor. But these things can happen. Sundowning, getting very agitated, shutting up the doors, shutting up the windows when the night is falling, and getting a knife and sleeping with a knife by the bed because somebody coming to get me. I hear that noise outside, somebody is happening. Again, that's a part of the dementia, and that's more dementia than it is Alzheimer's. That's a part of it. So having sharp objects. You took away their keys and they're not supposed to go driving. Somehow they find a spare key and they're in town and they're calling you going, I'm in town, but I don't know how to get back to East End. How did you get to town? Oh, I found a spare key in the drawer. So we got to be careful. They'll find a way and they'll have lucid days and they'll have not so lucid days. So it takes a team. Prevention, again, very, very important take home. Again, with that vascular dementia, hypertension, controlling that. Exercise is the easiest way. Some of us have to be on medication. Avoid smoking, control your cholesterol and diabetes. Head trauma. We often notice, and there was a study, I don't know if you guys remember the movie, where the football players, the American football, that is, not soccer, American football players often have end up with Parkinson's and a form of dementia, and they were thinking, oh, it's not related. And this one doctor, this African doctor, went in and he actually did discover that it is quite related. The damage to the brain, the damage to the neurons. Alcoholism. Alcohol can penetrate the brain and can cause brain cells to die. Sleep apnea. Okay, a lot of us have that, and it starts off with snoring. And if you don't realize, and no one tells you, because you don't realize you're sleeping, you actually hold your breath while you're sleeping for a little while. And that, oxygen is needed for the brain, so that kills off brain cells, unfortunately. Physical activity and being socially active. Those that are withdrawn or shut in decline much faster than even if you had dementia and you take them out still to church, even if they can't participate, still take them out because the activity, unless they're very scared and very upset when they go around new people. Remember, that's their old friends, but to them it's new people. So still social activities. This Mediterranean diet, very, very popular and well known. Those persons living in those areas of the world don't have as much Alzheimer's and dementia as us here in the Caribbean. High in fruits, and the fruits that we know for sure with the antioxidants that protect the brain are the berries, especially the blackberry and the blueberry. Very, very protective. Nuts and fish and the salmon, the omega-3s, we take them by capsule and we spend a lot of money, and that's okay because I'm a pharmacist, but get it from your diet, even better. Minimal red meat, and we've been hearing this for years and we're still not listening to it, but they have shown that minimal red meat and minimal sugar because of the issue of having diabetes. Promote and do brain puzzles. Learn new language is the #1 to build new neurons and build new connections. We don't know why, but in an Alzheimer's and dementia patient, the memories are laid down like you're laying them down on a bookshelf, okay? So they're like books on a bookshelf, and think of a whole bookshelf stacked with memories. Well, they know the oldest book there, so they can tell you about the 1932 storm very, very well. They almost tell it to you like you were there with them. Remember, we went in the cave and Cayman Brack and the water came in and this and that. However, you ask them what they ate for lunch, which is the newest book they put on the shelf, they cannot tell you. But they can tell you the days they went to sea. They can tell you about their daughter's wedding, what she was wearing, what she didn't say, what the speech was, what the song was. And why would that be? You would think the newer ones would be there, right? We don't know why, but they're laid down in the brain like that, and that's how they stay, unfortunately, until they're all gone. So in closing up, there's no cure for Alzheimer's and dementia, but we do have hope. Remember, we have to use a holistic approach. #1 is the education and knowledge. The more you know about the disease, especially the preventative part, the more you can prevent or do your part to increase or decrease your likelihood of having it. The more you can help and assist someone who has it and know, oh, I know what that is now. That she's not a witch, she has dementia. You know, I know what that is now. We're in the process of trying, we just came back from Orlando, a bunch of doctors and nurses from the hospital, as well as a private psychiatric doctor. We went to Orlando on a week-long training. So we're in the process of establishing a memory clinic. And we're having a lot of problems establishing this clinic because nobody wants to go. I think we wanted to call it brain clinic, and nobody wants to go to that. Because again, there's a stigma. I don't want anybody to know that I have an issue, but we have to remove that stigma. It's just like we're pregnant. It's nothing to be ashamed of, okay? It's a part of aging. So the brain clinic, basically, you're gonna go in like how you would go into your GP and you would do this mini cog, and then they would give you exercises to do with your brain, and then they would follow you up. Just like how you would go for your checkups for your blood pressure or your diabetes, it'll be the same type of clinic, but it's for your brain. We take care of every other organ, why not take care of our brain? But we're having a little bit of difficulty funding people that are interested in teaching it, people that are interested in learning about it. But recently we have a lot of physicians from the HSA as well, private physicians on board, and we're hoping to get it up. If you go over to Health City right now, they have a brain clinic. Yeah? When you go in the door, there's this brain sign and there's this little sheet. And if you're going in for something else, you fill out the little sheet and it asks you a couple of questions. How many times did you forget this? How many times did you do that? And you hand it to your doctor, even if you're going for something else, and he can right away, based on the score, see if he needs to do something further and a further evaluation based on the brain. So that's a start of a brain clinic. All right. Basically, support and management is very, very important. And last but not least, September. We're in September now, is WHAM, not WOW, but WHAM, World Alzheimer's Month. All month long, we're gonna wear purple in support. This weekend, we're supposed to be over to the BRAC, but due to weather, we have postponed that over to the BRAC. The 15th is Dress Down Awareness, so if you can support the cause, the shirts are only $10. On the 23rd, we are trying to keep in line with all the things that we said that you should do, which we said was fitness. So on September 23rd at Cayman Bay, On a Saturday morning, we're going to have a fitness palooza. And you don't have to be fit to come. And it's for kids and adults. So in the kids' corner, we'll have them playing puzzles and toys. And we'll have Zumba, and we'll have exercise, and we'll have yoga. And it's for all levels. You don't have to be a yoga expert or a Zumba expert. Just come out and keep moving type thing. September 28th, remember I told you, exercise the mind with puzzles. Challenge the mind every day. We also advise people to use your opposite hand when you're doing something else. It builds down and puts down new memories. So if you're right-handed, try to keep your right hand and use your left hand. Now, all of us are not ambidextrous. We can't write with it, but you can lift up or drive with it or something else. And it does lay down other memories for the brain. So the pub quiz at Fidel Murphy's, I encourage you guys to form teams, come out. Half of the questions we can't answer, like who was the first person inducted into the Hall of Fame, but it's fun. You're there and you're playing around, you're a team, and you put down names and you're laughing about it, you're socializing as well. And some of the answers you do get, because some people are very good at basketball, some people are very good at geography and things like that. So if you have a team, you're stimulating your brain. So we are in the process of making sure that we connect the dots in every way possible. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you guys very much. Please help us spread Alzheimer's awareness.